Such a pleasure to have you with me, Jesse. Thank you so much for making the time.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. So, first things first, man, I'd love to have you give a little bit of an introduction about yourself um, and where you're located.
Sure. I'm in the South Bay region of Los Angeles, the Beach Cities area, just south of the airport, sort of the coastal suburbs of Los Angeles.
Okay. And what cities does that include, generally speaking?
Manhattan Beach, El Segundo, Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, the Palos Verdes Peninsula, Torrance, Hawthorne, all those kind of cities, and a few others that. That kind of encompass that greater South Bay pocket.
And are you from there or where are you from originally?
I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been out here a little over 15 years, which is hard to believe. It really flew by, and like a lot of people who I think discover this little hidden gem of Los Angeles County, it's hard to leave once you get here.
So, what was it like growing up? Tell us a little bit more about your backstory.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, kind of came from a very blue collar, part of the country that I'd say, Pittsburgh really prides themselves on being a hardworking community where we all kind of, we typically all start working early in life, and it's a big part of our identity. And we don't have the best weather, we don't have the best, we're not a destination for the rest of the country to come visit typically, but we kind of like it that way. And we kind of would like to think that we got a lot of grit and determination, and you know all in all, we're still a steel kind of town through and through. And I think that um a lot of that's ingrained in those of us that kind of grow up there through those formidable years.
And
And
so what about now? What's life like now? So 15 years that you've been out there in the beach cities.
yeah, life is you know been sort of a blur in the best way. I think I moved out here in a tougher time after graduating school. College, I moved out straight out here. I had a couple buddies from back home that were living out here already. And I kind of figured, well, if I'm going to make a big jump and take a big risk and go somewhere completely new where I don't know anybody, I might as well do it when I have nothing to lose, everything to gain, I guess. Yeah, I started my own company right out of college with, a couple $1,000s to my name. And that was actually, within the real estate business. I was a vendor, and we did all of the marketing for real estate listings. We were like one of the first companies in all of like the LA region that utilized video as that one of the main marketing components that we were offering to clients. Well, when YouTube was really starting to build momentum as a popular website, and offered photography and all those kind of marketing materials that came along with listings. So real estate agents were my clients. And then I kind of parlayed that over the years into a different firm that I started with a partner that was more of a um, wider based clientele that did social media marketing back when it was still social networking. So this was in like 2012.
Now you're aging
Yeah.
yourself a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it was a pay to play environment like we have today, and that before the algorithms and all of that. And so we were really helping businesses kind of establish their online presence through those platforms and creating blogs and websites and social posts and all that kind of stuff, which is quite common then, but at that point it was pretty novel. And then I sort of got bit by the real estate bug a few years after launching that business, having variety of different real estate clients over the years between those two companies, both on the brokerage side and association side, and to individual agents and brokers. And then it sort of just took over, as it does. I was very naive to think that I could do real estate part-time. As we most of us know, that's an impossible thing to do, at least in the beginning. And I fell in love with it, and it just gobbled me up, and here we are, you know 15, 16 years later, out here. And I guess it was, to some extent, meant to be. If there's a place that, I'm going to be involved in selling real estate, this is certainly one of the most dynamic and engaging places in the country to do so.
Now, did you have a mentor to show you the ropes when you came into the industry, or how did that transition first kick off for you to enter?
Wouldn't say I had a specific individual mentor. I think that because I had come from a different angle as a vendor and entered into the business, with already having some established relationships with those people being my clients, I think that there was a little bit more of a welcoming to me, because I had built a reputation on the vendor side. Um, and I kind of, yeah, I kind of just approached it like my previous businesses, right? Where, it's, you have to start grassroots. You have to cut your teeth, do the things that you don't feel like doing, learn what you're good at, which not, maybe not is your strong suit, within the business, within acquiring clientele. Um, and yeah, I think I think I took bits and pieces from the people around me, um, and frankly, learned what not to do from some of the people around me as well.
It's very
And
valuable, you know.
yeah,
Yeah. And how
yeah,
many years ago was it when you got started? How many years has it been?
about a decade. I got my license. Didn't really kind of work that first year because I still had my other company, and then yeah, about you know I'd say 15 is when I really kicked it off. And I had a partner at the time, and her and I were both brand new. So it was like the blind leading the blind there. And then, yeah, but yeah, and then the journey began.
That's fantastic. So now in terms of the current business structure, what does that
Mhm.
look like? Are you solo, team, building a team? What's the structure?
Yeah. So small little team. But yeah, it's myself. I've got an associate working more on the buyer side. Ali, she's a recent addition, uh, um, just about a year and a half or so with us. And then I've have Sharon, who's like my operations manager for a little over 6 years, I think now. And she's just helps make sure that everything runs, and really gives the clients the white glove treatment. And yeah, so it's just the three of us. And yeah, but we're we're not an expand like we don't there's not a lot of bodies, but we're scrappy. Yeah.
Speaking of, so we'll say small but mighty.
Yeah.
What's your current annual sales volume look like for the team?
So yeah, we'll definitely be tracking this, for 2025 here into this, probably into the 70 millions, somewhere around there. 75 last year. And yeah, about 50 transactions.
Okay. And what's the average price point like out there?
Well, it runs the gamut, of course, out here. But for us, we typically trend in like the mid 1 millions, that range, um, for us, because we work with all different clients. We love working with our first time buyers who are just trying to enter in the market, which is a huge feat in our area. Southern California is expensive to start. The South Bay is one of the most coveted pockets of all of um, Los Angeles County. So we love those clients. It's a huge honor to be a part of that journey for that first purchase in this region of the country. And then we have clients all the way through to like the luxury end that, this is their 10th home that they've owned or purchased, and so we really enjoy having a wide spectrum because it makes things just interesting and fun, and you just get to see all sides of the industry and work with all different kind of people and solve all different types of problems along the way.
So what's your current ranking?
So when I was still just individual, I was the number one here in the South Bay region within Compass. But yeah, now we're a small team, so I'm not sure where we'll land, but we're definitely um, like I said, just always trying to get better every day, and it's a constant living organism, this business that you're running, right? And you can't just set it and forget it. So I think for us, that's the part that's one of the most rewarding pieces is this constant puzzle of how do we make this better? How do we make the experience better for our clients? How do we work more efficiently for them? How do we provide value that nobody else can provide? So I think that's, at least for my team, is I think a big, big piece of what makes us excited to come to work every day.
So just so I have this correct, so 15 years ago, you come out, you know, with nothing and everything to gain. 10 years ago, you get started in real estate and then number one solo agent and growing a team from there. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes, that
I think
Pittsburgh
that
grit
sums it up.
really pays off, you know?
Yeah, I think the key is to stay humble, keep your head down, and do the right thing for your clients. And that, I think that combination um, solve a lot of problems.
Is
And,
that why you
and
think your clients choose you to work with, as a representative?
yeah, I think that I think most people are astute and they understand who you are quickly, with the first impression. I think that, um, you can be successful at anything. It doesn't mean that you still need to stay humble, and you have to come from a place of service. The average person knows probably a dozen real estate professionals, and so there's a lot of choices out there. And I think that when you're working on such a big, milestone transaction as a consumer, you want it to be enjoyable. You want somebody that you're going to be attached to for maybe a number of months, to be somebody that you are happy to hear from when they call you, and it's inevitably going to be somewhat stressful. So having somebody that you feel is going to be able to be the calm within the storm, I think, is also something that I feel those typically gravitate towards. And so I think that is probably part of the equation.
Now, have you seen business grow year over year?
Yeah, that's been a big part of my overall goal set and trajectory, is that we continue to grow each year thoughtfully, intentionally. Um, because if you're not growing, you're dying, is, what I always kind of thought was a mantra in my previous two businesses. Fishing is there, and you have to factor that into the equation. And so you can't rest on your laurels, especially in a business that is extremely competitive here in Los Angeles County. It's just, there's a lot of people that throw their hat in the ring into this business. And if you're not constantly evolving to be a better fiduciary and expert for your clients, then you will suffer those consequences eventually.
That's right. Now, what do you believe has fueled the actual growth? Is there anything you can pinpoint or take a look at?
I think a lot of it is compound effect, consistency, um, you know, um, client first mentality, the power of no. knowing when you're not the right fit, knowing that the right things are around the corner and that you have to put your energy towards the things that are the best match. And know that you have to really come from a place of I need to be extremely confident that I am the best advisor for this particular situation. So sometimes saying no is the best thing you can do for yourself and these, the potential clients out there. I think systematically running your business, really focusing on, keeping everything extremely organized and trackable. And you can't measure what you don't track. So um, that's been a huge part of our business. It's just doing a lot of the little things consistently every day eventually build momentum, and momentum is the key to, I feel like, a consistent real estate practice. And so I think just kind of combining all of those things together, where if you know that you're the right person for the job and you're very confident in that, and you come from a mentality of I need to be a fiduciary through and through, I think that um, clients understand that subconsciously oftentimes, and then that ends up working towards that sort of compound effect where that builds over the time, because I don't really do anything super fancy in the way of trying to perfect a better mousetrap, so to speak, on luring people my direction. I think it's just do the right thing, focus on them, and then the rest sort of figures itself out.
Fantastic. Now, in terms of business itself, what are the biggest sources of business for you?
A lot of my business is referrals, repeat, sphere of influence. Um, whether that be my sphere of friends and past clients and um, other business advisors that I think that see eye to eye on my approach to my practice as they do to theirs. Those are the big ones for me.
And as you've grown, when did you know it was time to bring on support? And then ultimately, how did you choose the team members that you currently have?
Yeah, I'd say the theme that I've when I look back and reflect is that patience on both of those hires. I must have interviewed. Hmm, I definitely went through at least 100 applications for Sharon, who was my operations manager, and interviewed about a dozen people in person before I found her and knew that, and it was one of those things where like like, I like to think the same way that my clients, when they meet me, it was the similar thing that when I met Sharon, because I knew within a couple minutes that this is the person that was the right fit. And so we've you know, um, been able to enjoy a great synergy ever since that moment.
What was that thing, Jesse? What was it? Was it is it something you can pinpoint or identify that just the reason she stood out, or was it just a connection?
Mm. I think both. I think that, she's very experienced. She's a C-suite employee in her previous career, and she was there for a very long time and helped build it up and was a very early on employee. So I think that she has a very similar mindset of like, um, just service and being part of something bigger than just herself, and it's a lot of reward from that. I could tell that that was a big piece of the equation for her and just on her track record. But yeah, I mean, I think there's an element too where sometimes you can't really put it on paper. You just know there's a connection. There's just a way about certain people where you can tell that they come in with a smile on their face, ready to roll their sleeves up, right? And so I think that we had a lot of similar background traits too. And so, yeah, there was a sense of familiarity there.
Okay. And for Allie, what was it that stood out for her?
Yeah, I mean, Ali too. I looked for a long time, a number, actually a couple, few years, I think it was, on the search for somebody to fill that role. And I was very, you know, some argue overly patient on that. And but I'm happy that I waited because, yeah, a lot of the same things with Ali is like, Ali really cares. She wants to do the right thing. She's very loyal. She's super hardworking. She's got a great head on her shoulders. Another really impressive prior career path um, as a financial advisor. So she really understands a lot of the inner workings on the finance side that most don't, to her level of understanding. And yeah, just, another person that just is not afraid to get to work, right? And I think that uh, that's a little bit of a harder um, quality to find these days, to be frank. And so, yeah, I think that resonates with me certainly.
So we've been coaching together now for a little more than 4 years. And it's been an honor and a privilege to watch your growth. But how do you feel coaching has either helped shape or support your overall business?
Yeah, I'd say, it's a good to have a sounding board to really try to ensure that you're looking at everything through the right lens. You're not overseeing variables that could be really important, or maybe you feel a certain way, but you're not fully considering some of the other elements and other people involved in some of those decisions. And so I think that that's really an important role because um, you need to reflect, and sometimes it's hard to do that without having another person involved and that's sort of unbiased, right? And I think that uh, if you kind of just put the blinders on and find yourself in an echo chamber with yourself, that can be certainly problematic.
Absolutely. So, in terms of going back on the business, do you tend to focus on listings, buyers, both? What's the general
Yeah,
make?
we definitely a good healthy mix of both. I think I really enjoy the process of searching for property with buyers. I fundamentally love just the thrill of the search in a way, right? Like just comparing, contrasting different properties, and there's something there that's still super exciting to me that I don't think I'll ever lose when it comes to that. And then really, once we get into further into it and actually into a transaction, I love just helping make something that seems really, really overly complicated and complex and confusing and overwhelming, and bringing it down to a level that is smooth and streamlined and understandable. Um, that process and then providing that service to somebody that probably went into it very overwhelmed is super rewarding to me um, on the buyer side. On the seller side, equally fun and interesting. You have a lot of opportunity to really provide value in what can we do to put our best foot forward? What are ways that we can really ensure that um, we identify high return on investment opportunities before we go on the market? Um, I think that there's there's a lot of scenarios in which doing a lot of little things correctly can make a massive impact on the um, level of uh, interest and what you ultimately net for your seller. And so it's a different it's a different sort of puzzle, but it's equally as fun. And so both of them are great. And I think what with me in real estate, what keeps me so engaged with it is that there is never a same day at work. There's always a new problem to uncover. There's always a new solution that you'll discover that you didn't realize the day before. And so it's, the complexity and the variety are the things that keep me so engaged.
In terms of the ROI for sellers and doing some of those small things, any great examples that you might have, or even in terms of any programs that you offer, anything specifically for, just any seller who might say, I have this wonderful property and I have equity in the property, but I don't necessarily have cash on hand to fix it up, and I don't know how much it might take, and then I don't know what the ROI might be for even little things that can totally change the just the feel or the vibe of the property once it's listed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of our favorite things to do in our specialties. And what I mean, it's my team, and Sharon is excellent with really taking the vision and making it a reality step by step and the logistics behind it. But, I think there's two important pieces to this. When you go into a home, it's not only knowing what you should do, it's what you shouldn't do, because you can really chew into the net ROI if you start doing everything and it turns into a full, turned into a flip all of a sudden, right? So that's important. And then kind of having that understanding is a big piece of where I think I bring a lot of value. As far as executing, yes. So Compass has a concierge program that my team sort of took to another level, where we not only get the funds available from Compass through that program, which are um, there's no interest, there's no fees. It's basically a free loan that gets paid back after from the closing proceeds, and and in most cases, agents will say, okay, well, you've got the money. Here's the checklist of things to do. Call me when it's ready. When you've done all those things, what we like to do is not only identify, provide the funds, but then we handle the entire project, manage all the vendors, bring in all the vendors that are tried and true and reasonably priced and do great work and do it on time. And we just, we create a spreadsheet. We track every penny. We make sure that everything is done as it should be done. And that way our clients can just sit back and let us get to work and knock it out of the park for them. And that's and we've had so many examples of where we've executed that plan for clients. And sometimes it's as simple as, I have a property right now where we spent, about $10,000, but that's going to probably arguably 15x the ROI on that. Others where we've done a full-fledged, like almost everything's been, every wall's been painted, every floor's been redone, you name it, it's been handled. And there's um, a lot of different, elements when you have a lot of different vendors that you're organizing. It's sort of herding cats, but we certainly like to, um, we certainly like to insulate our clients from all that and just get it done and roll out the final product.
Sounds like a wonderful low stress,
Yeah.
high ROI experience for them.
Eh, that's
Yeah.
the goal.
So how's business been so far this year?
Really good. Yeah. Very consistent. We're tracking towards our goal. And yeah, we're humming along. I think we had 13 or 14 in Q1 that we closed on, and yeah, we're doing what we set out to do when we planned last year.
Any major trends that you're seeing in the market, especially compared to last year?
Um, this year's been a little bit more volatile. We've certainly got some new, like kind of more macroeconomic elements that have come into play, and a lot of people are, considering these things differently, and so you see it. Um, I think that the last couple years were a little bit more. Mm, how do I like? Uh, there was some there was some carnage still from the pandemic years, especially when we talk about rates. There was a lot of people still talking about the good old days of the 3% rates, right? And having a really hard time turning the page, knowing that that just wasn't going to, those, it's not coming back. And so I think there was a lot of leftover, um, you know, demand, but not as much action because a lot of people were still recalibrating from a really quick jump in rates over the course of a couple of months in 22. So 23 and 24 were a bit challenging with just a recalibration, I think, among the buyer market. And then, of course, you have sellers who, man, it's tough to pivot out of um, a highly likely refinanced property that has very, very competitive and compelling interest rates. So that made things a little tougher across the board when it just came to a number of transactions that were being put out into the marketplace. I think this year, my prediction was that was gonna loosen up a lot because I think we're further away from that pandemic market that I think for a lot of people, it's not either they weren't in the market then, it's a new group of buyers and sellers. And but with the recent economic unsteadiness, I think threw a little bit of a wrench in that in Q1, and we'll see how that goes moving forward. But there's always people that need to make a change and transact and find new housing, or life goes on, right? And so we're but yeah, it's I think end of the day, I like tough markets, to be honest. So so I'm not worried about it within our business. I think that markets that are more aligned with the true pros, so to speak, I think are the ones that um, I enjoy and hope to thrive in.
Absolutely. So then thinking long term for your business, what's the long term vision?
Well, I mean, the long term vision for me is to just keep doing what we're doing and keep getting better. And I don't see a world where I want to have 10, 15 people on a team. I want to be involved. I want to help my clients. I rather not turn into an HR professional within the business, which typically happens when you have a ton of personalities and people. And some people do extremely well and enjoy that element of it. But I really enjoy being inside the business from the standpoint of actually boots on the ground with the clients and the transactions. So that I think has always been a part of my vision, and I haven't wavered from that, and I don't think I ever will. And so I think, yeah, I think it's just, continuing to just dig deeper and entrench myself further and just become better.
Absolutely. So what are the biggest challenges? Is there anything that you feel like you're navigating right now? I know you mentioned the market's a little bit interesting with some economic uncertainty, but anything either on that front or on the business front that are, challenges popping up?
Not huge challenges. I mean, I think, we had some interesting things happen last year um, with all of the discussions about compensation. And I think that that turned into actually a positive. We were able to get more transparency on certain things. It opened up a good conversation to have with clients. I've ultimately, I believe that California being probably the most litigious state in the union, um, we were already where a lot of these states ended up leveling up last year. So it was something that wasn't really necessarily a California game changer. Um, and I think that it's just I think the challenges that come in our area is that there's just a lot of people that want to get into this business, I think that that's not a challenge that's unique to this year. I think it's a challenge that is maybe a little bit more prevalent in the last decade, where there's a lot of TV shows and things that kind of portray us as having a very simple and easy path and quote unquote easy money. And I think you combine that with a high price point market, and that becomes even more of an equation that brings a lot of people into our industry. And so I think the challenge that I find is it's about like, how do you stand out as somebody that's coming at this in the right manner? Because, ultimately, I mean, I passed the test. I got into real estate. Do I think that the bar was high enough? No. Do I think that that should be changed? Yes. Do I think that, helping somebody with a multi-million dollar transaction is something that should be highly vetted beforehand? Certainly. Um, so I think that that's always been one of the bigger challenges, is like, just you mix that in with the social media and everything else. Um, I think, yeah, I think that that's, so it's just like, I think continuing to focus on being the best you can be and finding ways to try to convey that to to those out there that are looking for guidance, I think is always something that's a unique challenge that's constantly evolving.
So for those watching, 15 years ago, you move out there, 10 years ago, you get started. And then last year, number one solo agent, 75 million in volume. Now you're building a small team. What's one habit or mindset shift or a strategy that's made the biggest difference for you to get from where you were to where you are?
Hmm. I think go deep as opposed to wide. I think that a lot of people want to, early in your career, it's easy to say yes to any opportunity because you're desperate for opportunities. And I think as you go, you have to really kind of hone in and build and trust the process in doing all the little things every day. Um, that the business will come and the people will understand, either consciously or subconsciously, that you're the right fit because you're focused in on a certain, geographical area. In LA County, I think it's a lot more applicable than other areas of the country, because we live in a vast area when it comes to these neighborhoods. This county is just interwoven with all these different neighborhoods, right? That have all these different idiosyncrasies to them. And although they might only be 10 or 15 or 20 miles away on the map, as you know, somebody that lived here before, that can be an hour or two, distance to actually get there. And so to be an expert in all of these different pockets is impossible. So I think that you really have to look at, how do I become the expert? Um, and so here, I think it's geographical is a key component. Um, Other parts of the country, that may not be as applicable,
Sure.
but to me, it's like, yeah, just like focusing in on that, trying to kind of go deep in those things that you're really passionate about, the areas you're passionate about, and really put your energy there, and uh, and just be open to um, you know being a constant student of the business and the industry and all of that, because I think as soon as you think you've learned it all and figured it all out, it's the beginning of the end.
Perfectly said. So what advice would you give to agents who want to grow their business or do something similar? And of course, different geographical areas, but if you had one piece of advice for them.
You've got to track. You've got to track, and you've got to stay extremely organized on, you know, um, what your plan is, right? Like if you don't have a really set plan, and you're not, not working on the business, right? And only working in the business, then you're eventually going to run out of bandwidth, and you're going to find yourself lost, right? Because I just think that a lot of people approach this as a sales role, and it's not. It's not. This is not a corporate sales role. This is a you're running an advisory firm, and what you're advising on is an asset that people are purchasing. So how do you run that business? This isn't about, you know, it's not like selling cars on a lot or selling medical equipment or whatever it may be. Like, you're running a little company, right? And you have to track everything, and you have to, and really approaching it like that, I think, is a key component to longevity and consistency.
If you were able to go back and talk to yourself in year 1, is that what you would tell yourself at that point?
I mean, I was fortunate enough to be a business owner prior, so I think I always approached it that way. I think I think the advice I would have given myself is find, a big hurdle for me was bringing my assistant and operations manager on. That was a big mental and financial hurdle. And once I did, I recognized that, delegating and support with somebody like that, um, and doing some of those aforementioned items with somebody else, was so paramount to growth, as opposed to trying to do everything on my own. Because ultimately, there's certain things that you're strong at and certain things you're weak at, and you have to really focus in on what's going to be your highest producing activities. And so I think if I were to tell myself in the beginning stages, I would have said start that earlier, rip the band-aid off, take the gamble. Um, but it's a tough hurdle to get over. You have to really feel confident because now you have another mouth to feed, within the business. But I think that was a huge turning point.
It makes us appreciate sharing that much more, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So final question for you, Jesse, would be, everybody that knows you loves you. You're a humble guy, nice guy. You're always trying to be as helpful as possible. You're also a husband and you have a beautiful baby. And so you've got this incredible business, beautiful family, as helpful as possible to as many people. How do you stay so grounded?
You know, Gosh, it's I think picking your spouse is probably one of the most important, if not the most important decision you're going to make financially. Certainly, you know, emotionally, and it's so I think she allows me to grind, right? Like, she knows that, and so yeah, that's, and I think that, my wife's a big piece of the puzzle here, right? Like, she's the unsung hero behind the scenes. Um, and but I think, end of the day, like, I put a lot of work in the early years and made a lot of sacrifices, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, I can tell you that, it was every weekend, open house both days, Saturday and Sunday, for very, very long string of years. And so I think for me personally, in my situation, I was fortunate to be able to do that stuff, before, while I was single, certainly before my daughter was born. And so it laid some groundwork for me to now be in a position to, you know, use, like I said, the power of no, where sometimes if you're not the perfect candidate, then you've got to use that time and effort towards your family and having a weekend off and doing some of those things. And so trying to have that balance is key, and trying to, I think another big piece of it is fueling yourself with, taking care of your body, getting your stress out the right ways, um, exercising and, like to me, it's like it's all interconnected. And so I think that, that's a big piece of the puzzle is um, just looking at everything holistically.
Jesse, thank you so much for making the time to share your experience and insights with all of us. And looking forward to many, many, many more big things for you coming up in the future. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate being on, and we'll talk to you very soon.